Hey there, how's it going? Welcome to the very first episode of the From My Perspective podcast. Thank you for joining me. My name is not important, but the topics we'll be talking about on the From My Perspective podcast could be to you. Let's find out. At this current point in my life, I am 25 years old. I am living in Auckland, New Zealand. I'm just about to finish my 3-year bachelor's degree, and I'm staring into the frighteningly dark abyss of the future. When I look into the future, I see a future of job hunting and competition, showing up for interviews, and seeing other candidates knowing that they're probably better than I am. It's a time I see that I need to put on this special type of persona of professionalism to trick, I guess, the people into wanting to hire me. It's a dark thought that potentially the degree that I've chosen isn't the one that I actually want to do. So today, we are going to be looking at two things. We're going to be looking at, one, existential crisis and how that affects our everyday lives, how it affects our futures, and how it might actually stop us from achieving anything real in our lives. But two is also kind of the opposite, kind of the same. It's trying new things. So if you have joined us here today on the very first episode of this podcast, thank you so much. You can see that this has been a new thing for me to try. So let's start off with just generally how it feels at the moment to be about 5 weeks out from the end of my degree. I am facing a fork in the road in my life at the moment, and I'm sure that there'll be a lot of students out there, not only students, but there'll be parents out there, there'll be, professionals out there who feel like they're at a bit of an impasse in their life as to where they think they might go next. They don't know if what they've done in their life has held any real meaning for them. And they're thinking about why, what's the point? That got very dark there for a second. I didn't mean it to go that dark. More a case of, what am I doing with my life that provides meaning for myself? And I think before we start on that, you have to go back to the whole idea of what is the meaning of life. Now, you're going to find that there's going to be a lot of different people who have the idea of the different ideas in terms of why they're here. Some people will tell you, that it's for God and things like that. Some people will tell you that there is no reason for existing. Some people will tell you that it's to just do whatever the heck you want for as long as you want. And truthfully, no one really knows. I can give you what I believe. I believe that we are here to do whatever we want to do. I think that it's our choice to decide what happens in our life. It's our decision and our right to choose as a human what our purpose is. Now, I do also realize how that could be perceived for people who are from other countries that potentially don't have the same opportunities or freedoms as we do. So that's something that I would like to look further into myself. But in terms of my life, it is about really what I want to do, when I want to do it, and making the most out of it. So I guess in a way, when it comes to existential crisis, it is just a lack of me knowing what I want to do with my life in order to move forward. It's also a big feeling of the decisions that I've already made being the wrong decisions or wasteful decisions. So I decided to go to university 3 years ago to be able to get a degree. So I've done a degree in teaching. I've done a degree in teaching, and before I first started, I was working in an organization that helped people, and I could see, or help and educate people, and I could see that there was a huge amount of information lacking in our kids, and that was one of the driving forces for me to become a teacher. And I don't regret that reasoning there, because I think that there are people that definitely need a lot of education in the world. You do definitely come across people that make very, very silly decisions. But not only that, not only just silly decisions, but decisions that they themselves can't explain why they've made. They just do it for no reason, essentially. Not even to make themselves happy or to help other people be happy or, yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to pause it there for the moment. So based on that, I'm definitely not regretting making the decision to go into a degree in teaching. I found that one of the biggest driving factors for myself in terms of doing a teaching degree was actually watching YouTube videos. YouTube is absolutely full of teachers that vlog their everyday lives about teaching. And I found myself watching a whole bunch of these ones that they have so much enthusiasm for life. Like, they're definitely in the role that they're supposed to be in, and they're sharing that sort of enjoyment and excitement with the world through their YouTube channel. And I think that I got sucked in a little bit to that excitement and wanting to be that person, and wanting to emulate that sort of excitement and that sort of happiness. And so that was also one of the driving factors for me to go into my degree. The point during my degree when I realized that potentially it wasn't what I wanted to do was after the first year, I think. After the first year, I'd gotten to the end and I hadn't gotten the marks that I was quite expecting to get. I realized that some of the classes really interest me. So the classes like history and not philosophy, psychology, those classes really, really interest me about, how kids learn and the history of teaching in New Zealand and the world, or before New Zealand, England. And I found those much more interesting rather than the practical side of actually teaching. And I think that continued into second year when we really started getting into doing things like lesson planning. And I found that I enjoyed the process of lesson planning, but when it came to actually teaching it, I did enjoy teaching it as well, but not as much as the actual planning for it. And I thought at that point, maybe I'm in the wrong degree. But I'm incredibly stubborn, and I didn't want to make it feel like I was wasting the money that I had already put in. So I guess I kind of scammed myself on that one. There's actually an idea in scamming where people who have been scammed, if they've put money in, regardless of whether or not they think they might have been scammed, they continue to put money in because they've already lost on it without the thought of just backing out, taking the loss and then moving on. I think I kind of pushed myself under the bus with this particular degree. Now, that's not to say that I'm not hugely excited about next year. It's not that I'm not hugely excited about taking on a new teaching position or teaching role, things like that. It's just simply I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to get up every single morning and really enjoy what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And I think that's the part that scares me the most. And I think it might be the part that scares most people the most, is to the thought of, this is it for the rest of my life. I have never ever been someone that has been able to just do something over and over and over again. I get bored very, very easily. If I don't see a point or, a reason to do something, then I tend not to, or I try and pass it on to someone else. And I guess that's probably one of my biggest faults as a human, is that I can't just sit down, or I can't just do what I need to do. So this is going to be a really, really special testing point, I think, in my life, just to see what I can do as a person to make sure that I'm hitting the targets I need to daily, which will most likely be the same targets, but doing it in a way that's new and exciting, so that I don't become stagnant, I guess. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. But in terms of existential crisis, I looked into some online resources about, what you can do as a human to sort of overcome that sense of existential crisis. And this is from the clevelandclinic.org. And it's an article that's just basically 6 ways to overcome an existential crisis. It was published this year in June, the 26th of June 2020, which I guess at this point, especially considering this year with COVID and lockdown and job loss and all that sort of things, this is actually probably one of the most prevalent articles to come out around mental health that isn't concerned with depression or anxiety. I guess you could say existential crisis is a form of anxiety, but yeah. So the article is 6 ways to overcome an existential crisis, and essentially they're talking about, what it is, where it usually comes from, and they talk about points of your life, like losing a job, which many people have this year, finishing school, which I've done this year, potentially things like dealing with the death of a loved one, or, the ending of a relationship, things like that. But essentially it comes from a sudden change in circumstances in your life, because you do sort of get into this cycle of being comfortable, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I stayed within my degree, because it was a comfortable place to be. That when I'm coming out of it now, it does fill me with a bit of dread about the future. So here are 6 ways that you can overcome your existential crisis. So I'm going to go over each of them, and I'm going to talk a little bit about them, whether or not I agree with them. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can come and interact with me online. I am on Twitter with the page of at FMP Podcast. Please feel free to give us a follow there, and tell us what you think, if you agree, if you disagree. I'm still in the process of setting up a whole bunch of different forums for you guys to be able to get back in contact, because you may not agree with some of the things that I say, or you may agree, or you may have something else that you want to add that we can talk about in the next podcast. So, number 1 of how to overcome your existential crisis, or dealing with existential crisis. 1, adjust your viewpoint. So essentially what they're saying is that your mindset is what sets you up as where you feel like you're at in your life. Your mindset is what helps you decide what emotion you're going to use to deal with a situation. So someone who's not necessarily going through an existential crisis, they may also be going through a fork in their life where they are excited about the future. They're excited about not knowing what will come next. And that's more to do with your mindset and viewpoint than anything else. So it's about change. Front number one's about changing how you see something. So changing the situation as a crisis or something bad, and changing that viewpoint as an opportunity that you may not have gotten if you had just stayed within your tiny, comfortable bubble. Number 2 is keeping a gratitude journal. So keeping a gratitude journal about the things that you're thankful for and that add meaning to your life, because meaning and finding a purpose is really at the core of an existential crisis. It really is important to be able to find those things that you are thankful for, that you do take meaning from. I personally have tried to start a gratitude journal many, many times. It doesn't usually work out. I usually buy a new journal, that excitement of new stationery, write down in a couple of pages, and then I just leave it for the next 3 months until I'm cleaning out the office or cleaning out my bedroom, and I find it, sitting there dusty, and then having a look through it and saying, oh, why didn't I continue with this? And then I write something else in it, and then it gets left for another 3 months. So I guess you can say I do gratitude journaling, but very, very sporadically and not to any real effect in my life. But if this is something that they are suggesting that I do, then maybe we'll start it again today, right after this recording. And then we can check back in 3 months and see if I have remembered to actually write in it, or if it's just been sitting collecting dust again. So number 3 on this list is connect with people. So they're saying that existential crisis can happen when you feel disconnected from people in your life, and it is important to reestablish those connections to make you feel more grounded. I don't tend to reach out to people. I'm not a very social person. I am generally pretty introverted. I don't make friends very well. I'm not someone who likes small talk at all. Oh my goodness, I hate small talk. But you can't just start a relationship with talking about really, really deep stuff either, because people will look at you like you're absolutely mental. So the people that I do tend to connect with the most in order to sort of move my way out of that existential crisis really does lie with, one, my partner. He is incredible to talk to, and he's a lot less emotional than I am. He's very much more logical, which can be absolutely frustrating at times when you are looking for something along the lines of more like sympathy than you are logical advice. But I do really appreciate the fact that he is there to be able to say, no, that's not right. You're being silly. You're overthinking it. The other person that I love talking to is my mum. So my mum's gone through a lot of change in her life as well. She's gone through some addiction and things like that. So it is really fantastic to talk to mum about that sort of stuff. Because she understands the feeling. She knows what it feels like to feel like you're not moving forward. And we are kind of each other's support in a sense, where we encourage each other to continue to keep pushing, to find the thing that's going to help us the most. The other person I talk to is my younger sister. I don't tend to talk very much about my existential crisis, but it is very, very nice to talk to my younger sister about what she's planning to do with her life, and not so much like 5 years in the future or anything like that, but just even next week, that sort of thing, because it is refreshing to talk to someone who is still at that age where they do really just live in the moment and are able to articulate that they don't know what's going to come in the future, but at the moment it doesn't matter. So that is it's refreshing to be able to see. Sometimes talking to it is frustrating because you want them to think about what's going to happen in the future, but then other times it's really, really refreshing to have that idea that maybe it actually doesn't matter, Just make a decision and move on. And if it's the wrong one, change it, and then we'll see how that goes, Anyway, number 4, practice mindfulness. Do you know what? I think I would lump this in with the gratitude journaling. I think there is a large sense of mindfulness that you need in order to be able to do that journaling. But you don't need to do the journaling to be mindful. So it really is about savoring those experiences that you have and remembering them and spending time on things that make you feel better as a person. And that might not necessarily be an activity that you do. That might just be remembering things that you used to do that made you happy, a memory that you have that makes you happy as a person. Number 5 is redirecting your energy. So they've used the pandemic as a big example here, with a lot of people, not being able to go to work or losing their jobs, and all the extra time on our hands that we now have because of this pandemic. So in New Zealand, we had a lockdown. I can't even remember how long it was for. It felt like forever. I think it might have been like 2 months. 2 months, maybe, where everyone just stayed home. The only time you'd really ever see people is when you have to go to the supermarket, because everyone still needs to eat food. And it really pushed people into a place where, oh, well, goodness gracious, now I've got nothing to do. What the heck am I going to do? And I guess that was probably a very large wake-up call for a lot of people when they realize that when they don't have things to distract them, like going out and shopping or going to work or going out to a cafe, that a lot of their life and their personality, I guess, is built around working, or is built around consumerism, in terms of buying goods from the store or going out and having dinner or things like that. And I guess it really put into perspective for a lot of people how important things like hobbies are, specifically indoor hobbies. So during that time in New Zealand, a lot of gaming consoles sold out because, well, now there's a lot of, time on my hands. What the heck am I going to do? I'm just going to drown myself in media. And I guess during that time, there would have been a lot of Netflix shows that were binged, as well, as Disney Plus, all that sort of stuff, because people had more time on their hands to be able to do that sort of stuff, but they didn't have any other hobbies that was an interest to them. So I found myself in that boat a bit, because most of my hobbies include watching videos on YouTube and Netflix and things like that, playing games on my laptop or on the PlayStation, and that's about it. I didn't have the money, because I'm still a poor student, to be able to go out and buy a whole bunch of stuff to start a hobby. So I've sort of been cooking this particular podcast up and trying this as a new thing for quite a long time, to redirect my energy and my excess time into, especially my creative energy. I come from a background where I have always been quite creative. I've always loved acting. I love singing. I love dancing, but I'm not good at it, so I don't do it in public. It's more of a dance like no one's watching thing when no one's watching. But yeah, so it was definitely difficult for me because I hadn't been doing any of that acting or dancing or singing for quite a long time with other people that love doing the same thing. So I had to sort of look into finding other things to do. So that's a big one for that existential crisis sort of thing. Let's have a look at number 6. Number 6 is don't dwell on the past, which is better said than done, I think. And it's going to be a lot easier for some people to say, oh, well, that's the decision I made and move on. There's definitely going to be people that are going to dwell and ruminate on specific decisions that they've made or things that have happened to them that, they potentially didn't want to happen. So, losing a job or losing a relationship, especially during lockdown. There's probably quite a few relationships that broke down because couples had never spent that much time together before. So, yeah, I guess that's something that has to be practiced, I suppose. Not looking back. They've got a quote here that says, don't look back, you're not going that way, which is pretty cool, I guess, because it's true. There's no point in looking back to something you can't change. But I know particularly in my case, there has been things that have gone in my life that I'm still trying to let go. Things that happen. So I think that the big driving force behind me trying new things would be that sort of sense of existential crisis and wanting to find a new normal or a new thing that I can hook myself onto. So I have started 2 new things recently. And I'm wanting to find more new things to try, but I think I'm going to just slow down a little bit, really get to grips what I'm doing now with these 2 new things, and just develop my skills in that. And if you hadn't noticed, or if you weren't listening to the first part, this is one of my first new things that I'm trying. So Humble Bundle, if you're not sure, they used to be called Humble Indie Bundle, I think, but they're essentially this website where you can buy these bundles they put together, and all of the proceeds for each of the different ones go to different charities. And they had this book bundle, so digital book bundle, which was aimed at social influencers or becoming a social influencer. I wasn't really interested in most of them. The one that I was mainly interested in was the podcasting one. And I was interested in it the most, I think, because I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, but the ones that I do, I really love listening to. And it is really, really interesting to be able to just chuck one on and listen to them talk for a long time about a range of different topics. Like I follow one which is about gaming, specifically more to do with PlayStation and their developments and things like that. And there's another one I listened to. It is about murder mysteries and things like that. I can only listen to those for so long before I start to think that the world is just an awful place to live. But it is quite relaxing just to be able to chuck it on and go for a walk or go for a drive, something like that, and just listen. You don't have to sit there and take everything in. Sometimes it's just nice to have as a background sort of noise. So that was one of the reasons why I bought that book and really wanted to get into this sort of podcasting. I have owned, so that the microphone I'm using is a Blue Yeti, and I've owned this microphone for a few years now. I originally bought it because I love ASMR videos, and I created a couple of them as well. And I still love creating those sort of videos, but they don't come up very often. It's really a sort of when inspiration strikes, and inspiration just hasn't been striking as much as I would like it to. So I decided that, well, it's been sitting there, it's just been gathering dust. What else can I do with this microphone? And the next thing that I came up with was podcasting. And I realized that, hey, that's probably something that I really want to try. I may not be any good at it. I may not capture the audience or anything like that. But maybe it's okay for it just to be for me. Maybe it's okay for it just to be there as something that I look back in 5 or 10 years and think, oh, is that what I thought about then? Is that what was the most important thing in my mind? That's cool, or that's really pathetic, or I'm so glad that I'm in a better place now, or even, wow, I was in such a good place then. So this is really, it's not just a new thing I'm trying, but it's also a record of who I am at this point, at this current time in my life. And if that sort of resonates with other people, then that's awesome. That's really cool. And as I said, you can always interact with me on that social media page, FMP Podcast, at FMP Podcast on Twitter. As I said, there will be other social media platforms, but at the moment that is where it is. Now, the other thing, so podcasting is number one. That is the first new thing I've tried, and it's the first new thing I've tried in a very, very long time. But the second thing, that is the second new thing that I'm trying, today I bought myself a guitar, an acoustic electric guitar. I had to put this thing on, it's called Zip in New Zealand, but it's kind of like Afterpay, or like lay-by, but you get the item first. So you pay it in four installments, pay the first installment today. I have wanted to learn how to play guitar for a very long time, but I've never taken that step. I have been wanting to buy a guitar for the past 2 months, but I just haven't had the financial backup to be able to do that. So, so it is a metal stringed acoustic electric guitar with a cutaway. I also bought in that same transaction a capo to be able to change the key and all that sort of stuff. I bought the guitar stand, and I also bought a bag of picks, because knowing me, if I was going to miss anything, it'd be the bloody picks. So I made sure that I bought the picks. I am waiting on that with bated breath. I am very, very excited about when that's going to come, and to get started on actually learning how to play guitar. So when I was 11, Mum actually bought me a guitar that was massive, too big for my body. It was bright pink, it had nylon strings, and I went to the first couple of itinerant music lessons that my school was provided, and I hated it. I hated the guitar. I hated the feeling of the nylon strings. I hated the teacher and how they were trying to teach us. It wasn't my preferred method of learning. So that I have no idea where that guitar's gone now. I assume that Mum has it somewhere, or it's been chucked away, or it's been given away, or it's been donated, something like that. But at the start of this year, as part of my teaching degree, I chose an elective of teaching music, introducing music to the classroom. And one of the things that we we did was learning how to play basic chords and basic songs on a ukulele. And when she said that, I said, oh, that's so stupid. Like, why would I want to learn songs on a ukulele? It's so dumb. And then when she handed them all out, we all got them and we all started, and it sounded bloody awful. And then I started to get a hang of it. Now, ukuleles are deceivingly easy to play. They're incredibly easy to play. And I am so grateful now that teacher, that lecturer actually, put the ukuleles in our hands and said, no, we're going to learn this now because it's important that you know what it's like to learn. And I think that music course, it was only a week, it was a week block course. That music course was the thing that really reignited my love of music. Because when I was in high school, I did choir and performing arts and all that sort of stuff. And it was the first time for so many years that I had actually picked up something to learn it. And I loved it. I loved it so much that the second day that we played the ukulele, I took a weird detour home. So I had to get two trains and 2 buses in order to get to school. I took a weird detour home. I walked for about an hour and a half just to get to this music store to purchase myself a ukulele because I loved it and I wanted to keep playing. I wanted to learn more complicated chords. I wanted to learn more complicated songs. And it got to a point where this year I'd been practicing it so much that I actually wrote my first song. And I loved it. I love playing the ukulele, but it has its limitations. It has its drawbacks as an instrument. What I want is something larger with more chord capabilities, with richer chords. A ukulele only has 4 strings, normal guitar has 6. So I thought that the most logical next step would be to go onto a guitar. And I sort of tossed up between whether I wanted that guitar to be a bass guitar, an electric guitar, acoustic guitar, and I landed on acoustic electric because I wanted, first off, I didn't want nylon strings, I wanted metal strings. And I knew that because when I was a kid, my friend, she was very, very good she was quite good at guitar. And she had a few guitars and they were all metal strings, and I would, try and play them and learn a couple of chords and things like that. And it just felt so much better in my hand and so much better on my fingers than nylon strings do. And it just sounded so much nicer to my ear. So I knew that I wanted metal strings. And I knew that I didn't want to learn on a fully electric guitar because it's going to sound awful to begin with. It is going to sound awful, and I don't want that to come through a bunch of speakers, through an amp or anything like that. I want it to sound like a more natural guitar sound. I know that if I do really latch onto this and really love it and really keep going, that I probably will end up buying an electric guitar, because I've always looked up to, the guitarists of bands and how talented they are in terms of what they can do with the frets and their fingers on them. So those are my 2 new things that I'm trying. If you are trying something new recently, I would absolutely love to hear about it. So you've heard the Twitter handle several times, FMP podcast. Pop over there, tell me what you think. It's really means a lot. So until I sort of get to a point where I have a proper sort of website set up and things like that, I hopefully will be going through WordPress and all that sort of stuff. and all my links will be on Twitter and Reddit. I do also have a Reddit page, but I haven't quite set that up yet, so I will let you know in the next episode about that. Thank you so much for sitting here and listening to a 40-minute ramble on about God knows what. It has been a real joy to be able to talk to you today, and it's been a real joy having you here with me. So as I said, my name is not important, but the topics we talk about potentially are to you. Thank you so much for joining me on the first episode of From My Perspective, of the From My Perspective podcast. I do look forward to hearing what you think about it, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and a wonderful life. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.